In the name of God, the beneficent, the merciful, I seek refuge in God against the accursed enemy, the rejected devil. Jaleel White, who portrayed Steve Urkel on the TV series Family Matters, explained when he was interviewed, all of us, every last one of us, even this audience, you have a purpose and you gotta figure it out. It's a puzzle for you to figure out in your life. This statement can apply to you out there. Whether you have been following me on YouTube for over a year before I moved to the Philippines, or whether you started watching after I moved here, whether it was 6 months ago or within the last 3 months ago, which was basically this summer, basically, it certainly applies to me, as I've made many adjustments this past year, the past 2 years, the past 3 years, the past 6 years, the past 10 years, 15, 20, 25, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, and 60 years. Yeah, I had to go into that time detail. Those are approximately milestone years and times in my time here on Earth. I'm going to make several references here to the TV character Steve Urkel, who is most famous for being and starring on that show Family Matters, which ironically was based in Chicago, where I was born and raised. I have in the past been addressed as and was seen as Steve Urkel. I was called Steve Urkel. In real life personal encounters, in YouTube commentary, and even by a Filipino YouTube vlogger, Sharonlapulapu. I'm going to address that vlog in question in more detail as I close this vlog, this is short for video log. Generally speaking, when people will refer to me or describe me as being Urkel, I would be somewhat annoyed. Now, not so much, because I see the truth of it, but in addition, I see the good and the positive. After all, I've had to endure people's expressions of such views for 60 years. Long before there was a Steve Urkel. In 1963, when I was 4 years old, there was the Nutty Professor, portrayed by Jerry Lewis, who was a favorite comedian of mine in my younger days. In what many say is Jerry Lewis' greatest film, Jerry Lewis plays a socially awkward college professor who demonstrated great acts of genius. So the timing could not have been more perfect when I went to kindergarten that year after the movie came out. I was known throughout the elementary school years as the Nutty Professor, or just the Professor. That time marked the beginning of a life of being socially awkward and inept in many situations, or I would say certain situations. That social awkwardness really came up and out when I was dealing with girls and later on with women. I was what some call scared of girls. I remember being called a sissy. I remember several occasions where someone asked me whether I even like girls. Someone even had the unmitigated gall to make such an inference on another vlogger's channel since I've been in the Philippines. I guess that's because I wasn't parading and gallivanting with a young, tasty, juicy Filipina, the likes of which are the subject of so many Western men's erotic fantasy. I wasn't coming on my channel talking about how I'm getting it every night. I'm getting a Filipina, tune up an oil change every night and all this. During those younger days to which I am referring, I vividly remember being teased for the nerdiness and the nuttiness. The nuttiness. Make no mistake though, I like girls, but I was very awkward and shaky around them, if I could use that term. When I first had my first intimate experience with a woman in my late teens, and when I met my first and only girlfriend at age 20, the day before I graduated from DePaul University, it was divine intervention. Steve Urkel, the Nutty Professor, and I fit the archetype or the prime example of a socially inept intellectual who means well but often messes things up. Despite his intelligence, his actions often come across as clumsy and foolish. With experiencing how I was treated and how I felt, the disillusionment began early. I don't know whether one could say whether I was popular or not among my schoolmates and later on among my workmates, the co-workers. But among those who were somewhat familiar with me, I was famous. Or you can say infamous. And I have been seen that same way within the past year that I spent in the Philippines. Most of it I spent in the Philippines. Some of you out there can testify to that because you had those same viewpoints. It then was said that I was a brilliant student, and I was on a first name basis with many of the teachers, well known. They knew who I was. I started being called a genius as a toddler. That was mainly because I could read English at a high school level at the age of 3. I was the subject of articles in Jet magazine and several Chicago newspapers and publications. I remember my mother and I being in the waiting room for the Lee Phillip television program, which was based in Chicago at that time. Who is Lee Phillip? Lee Phillip later on would marry a Mr. Bell, and together Lee Phillip and her husband, Mr. Bell, created the most famous daytime drama called The Young and the Restless. And they also created The Bold and the Beautiful. Both of those shows my mother still watches to this day. I believe that show has been on for over 40 years. Well, I ended up not appearing on the show for whatever reason, but I sure remember sitting in that waiting room saying, "You getting ready to go see Lee Phillip?" I don't even know whether I even saw Lee Phillip. But anyway, the genius title or nickname would continue to stay with me through much of my high school years. And yes, the disillusionment began at an early age as well. Well, there it is. The reference to the disillusioned genius, as I was referred to on the vlog, Sharonlapulapu's vlog, the one I'm responding to today. Steve Urkel. Several have called me that. Steve was commonly known and respected by the other characters on that show, Family Matters, for his kindness to others, his never-ending love and loyalty for those he holds dear. And he would often be seen as having the voice of reason and being a source of wisdom. These represent the redeeming qualities for his generally unwelcome and tolerated presence. Unwelcome, tolerated. Notice I did not say loved. Steve always cared and means well for other people, but he was often the misunderstood victim or object or target of people's anger and rejection. People all struggle to see through his clumsiness and annoying behavior and to understand and appreciate him for his positive traits. Steve Urkel is a kind person, bears no hatred for anyone, and known as extremely loyal, especially to his friends and those he has high regard for, whether they be in his family or not, just as the Winslows were not in his physical, biological family. I may have been seen that way, but I can count on one hand the number of times someone has come out and said to anyone or told me directly that I was kind. Each and every time, it was a Filipino who said that. Each and every time I was called kind in my whole life, 65 years, it was a Filipino who made that statement. Nevertheless, I was done to Urkel. Some have taken advantage of him, behaved coldly toward him, harshly rejected him, and then they may have learned later that they hurt his feelings or hurt my feelings. Can't say whether they gave a damn or not. I'm going to say most of the people didn't give a damn. Now, I want to directly respond to previous vlogs of which I was the subject. There were others, such as the one, I did with Sunshine out of San Carlos City. But specifically, I'm addressing the one today by a Filipino vlogger who has become quite popular in some circles. I am, of course, referring to Sharonlapulapu. Sharon accurately stated on her vlog that she was the first and ended up being the only Filipino vlogger who actually kept her word and followed through on the agreed understanding that she would interview me for her channel. And she insisted on doing it in person, which I respected that. Sharon also made a statement that I sought a relationship with her before coming to the Philippines. That is also true. However, I will clarify that I sought a business relationship, dealing with creating content for YouTube, such as interviews, fundraising for her daughter Laura, doing some karaoke together, promoting my music, and perhaps recording some songs in the studio. Sharon also mentioned that I wrote a song about her. There is also truth to that statement. The song called I'll Tell You Who She Is was mainly inspired by Filipina P, but also Sharon, Rika, who was known as Filipina Petite, and 3 other Filipina vloggers. Sharon was the first person I sent the completed song to. I didn't get an overwhelming response to it, though, as I would have liked. Take a listen to a little bit of this song now and Sharon's part and contribution to it in the video.
And again, made up my mind, she's my choice. Help me to find my voice. Made up my mind, she's my choice. Help me to find my voice. Who's that woman? Who's that girl? Brings good loving to my world.
Happy life,
Who's that
health, and
woman?
love,
Who's
love,
that girl?
Referring back to Steve Urkel, as I was called, Steve had this strong infatuation with Laura Winslow. Although she showed that she couldn't stand him and did not want to give him the time of day. One might say Steve was in love with Laura, but that quote unquote love was unrequited, not returned, not shared back to him. Steve Urkel dreamed the impossible dream. You could say that in Steve's mind and in the mind of observers. He was swinging for the fences. Swinging for the fences, which is the term that Sharonlapulapu used. That's a baseball term, meaning that a man is presenting himself in the batter's box with the sole intention of hitting a home run, which is seen as a batter's ultimate success. In the lyrics of the song, which I co-wrote with Isaac Hayes, it says, "Well, I'm hung up on my baby, and it makes no sense at all." The Filipina that this sentiment accurately and truly applied to was the Filipina P. I am the most infamous among the audience of the YouTube Philippine genre because of this fact. And I actually talked about my infatuation or being in love or my regard for Filipina P with a few famous or infamous vloggers at the time. Several of them you may know. Calvin Sunshine Shoulders actually did a vlog about it. I don't think I told him exactly who it was at the time, but he did a vlog. The subject of that was long distance conversation. I also personally was on the phone for over 30 minutes with Rike. A couple other vloggers or people in the YouTube world that I talked to. Not when I mentioned Filipina P or not. But yeah, I suffered from a love hangover. It was love overboard when it came to Filipina P. Noting here that started exactly 3 years ago when Sweet Pea decided to open up to chat on Facebook Messenger. When she did that, I jumped to it. Sweet Pea had a birthday around that time, September 29th to be exact. And I started sending little chats and serenading Sweet Pea, starting with 5 karaoke videos I sent her for her birthday. I think I posted them on Facebook at the time because I didn't have YouTube. But I sent her 5, I did 5 karaoke videos I sent her for her birthday, which she loved, by the way, and complimented me on. Those chats and exchanges would go on for several months. And I would gradually grow ever fonder towards and develop feelings for Sweet Pea. Until that fateful week, which started with me getting some bad health news and ending with Sweet Pea telling me she was taken. That was the beginning of the coldest days of my life. Major disillusionment. I certainly didn't feel like a genius. It took me about a year to process that, what had happened. And this statement here by Steve Urkel describes what I was enduring. I remember seeing this clip on the show. He was talking to Laura Winslow. He says, "I know I'm not worthy of you, but I just can't help loving you. It's like wanting to touch a star. You know you'll never reach it, but you just gotta keep trying." Sharonlapulapu. You are not on such a list as you inferred. I guess this would have been the list of women, Filipinas, I would have been interested in being romantically involved with. You are not on such a list. So you would not have been taken off the front of it and put on the back because you were never on it. I will say to you, Sharonlapulapu, as I looked at your video again with a more critical eye, I appreciate the fact that you took the quality time to do research on my Gullah Geechee identity and heritage. It's where I got the Geechee from in the person of Geechee Lion. Of course, you know the lion is because I, as you are, by the way, were born under the zodiac sign of Leo, the lion. And you know, several times I would call you and refer to you as lioness for this reason. Yes, Sharonlapulapu, you referred to me as the disillusioned genius. Yes, I was certainly disillusioned, starting with the relatively cold reception I received during my return to Cebu in December. During that time, I responded to another of your videos, Sharon, about the end of the Filipina euphoria. Disillusion. My settling on and for San Carlos City. Disillusion. Filipinas saying they gonna interview me, and then they back out of it and ghost me. Disillusion. I had a couple of vloggers, 3 vloggers, based out of Cebu City, said they were gonna take me on a tour of Cebu. I was looking forward to it. When the day came for us to do it, they didn't even have the courtesy to call me. This was after I talked to the woman on the phone. The day came, no phone call. Didn't show up, no phone call, nothing. Complete ghosts. Yeah, disillusion and a little bit and other emotions along with it. But after all of that, I can declare that I've emerged from that a better, stronger, wiser person with the occurrence of God-sent miracles that came into my life a few months later. Sharonlapulapu. I also appreciate that you expressed admiration for some personal qualities of mine, such as determination, enthusiasm, fortitude, and grit. When I first saw this vlog you did, I was somewhat upset about it because it was reminiscent of the teasing I had received before over the past 60 years, being seen as Steve Urkel, the nutty professor, the weirdo, goofy, the loser, with women especially, and so on. I tried to reach you in an attempt to discuss with you how I felt about seeing that vlog and how I was being portrayed. Of course, I was unsuccessful in reaching you. I'm glad that these months have passed, which have given me an opportunity to process, to chill out, to think, and to be able to respond more so rationally versus responding more emotionally. I'm thankful that I've had the opportunity to meet you, Sharon, in person more than once. And also thankful to have participated with you on several live streams. I think we've done at least 5 live streams with our mutual friend, Lilibeth Tate. I have taken those opportunities to share some of my thoughts frankly, with seriousness, and at times with humor and flirtation. In your presence, in person, and even online, smiles naturally come to me, which are evident to anyone observing. Some people have different ideas, thoughts, or feelings about that. Well, what started in the evening has taken me to early morning, but I had to get this out. This response was long overdue, maybe about 9-10 months overdue. Sharon, I trust that you will take what I express here as I have done before on the vlog. I've said these words, these 3 words. Refer back to when we were on with Lilibeth Tate recently. After it all, I still love you, Sharon. I close with the words of Jaleel White. And it just so happens I looked up the meaning of Jaleel. It means great, and majestic. That's what Jaleel means. So I close with the words of Jaleel White, who portrays Steve Urkel. We can't control who we love, and nobody symbolizes that more than Steve Urkel.